You hear it before you see it. A high-pitched scream tearing through the sky at over 600 kilometers per hour. You have maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds to bank, dive, and not die. In the skies over the Eastern Front in 1943, 2 seconds was everything. This wasn't a simulation. It wasn't a training exercise. For Erich Hartmann, a 21-year-old German fighter pilot from Württemberg, this was Tuesday. 352 aerial victories. That number sits on the page like a misprint. No other pilot in the history of aerial warfare, in any country, in any war, before or since, has come close. The nearest rival, Soviet ace Ivan Kozydub, scored 64. The top American ace, Richard Bong, scored 40. Hartmann scored 352. He was shot down 16 times and walked away from every single one. How does a human being do that? To understand it, you have to go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of the war, the beginning of Erich Hartmann. He learned to fly before he could legally drive. His mother, Elisabeth Hartmann, was a glider pilot who ran a small flying club in Wilhelmsdorf. By the age of 14, Erich was already her student. By 15, he was instructing other children. The feel of an aircraft, the way it responds, the way it protests, the way it lies to you when you're doing something wrong, became as natural to him as walking. When he entered the Luftwaffe in 1940 at age 18, he wasn't learning to fly. He was learning to fight. He arrived at Jagdgeschwader 52, Fighter Wing 52, the most decorated fighter unit in Luftwaffe history, in November 1942. He was green, overconfident, and almost immediately got himself shot down on his very first combat mission. He had broken formation to chase a Soviet aircraft alone, lost situational awareness, and found his Bf-109 taking hits from a direction he hadn't seen. He crash-landed in Soviet-held territory, evaded capture, and made it back to base on foot. It was humiliating, and it was the most important lesson he ever learned. His mentor, a veteran pilot named Walter Krupinski, nicknamed Count Punsky by his squadron, credited with 197 aerial victories himself, sat him down and said something simple. You fly like a hunter, not a brawler. Study the kill. Make it certain. Make it close. Then pull the trigger. Hartmann absorbed this, and then he built something entirely his own. His method had a name inside Jagdgeschwader 52. They called it See, Decide, Attack, Reverse. In plain English, observe, plan, strike, and escape before the enemy knows what happened. It sounds simple. It was in fact almost impossibly difficult to execute consistently, but Hartmann drilled it until it was reflex. He never engaged unless he had the advantage. Never. If the odds were unfavorable, he broke off. Other pilots thought this made him cautious. He let them think that. What it actually made him was alive. His attack profile was unusual. Most pilots opened fire at 200 to 300 meters, a safe enough distance to avoid collision, far enough to be somewhat inaccurate. Hartmann closed to 20 meters. 20. The wingspan of a Soviet Ilyushin Il-2 ground attack aircraft, the most produced military aircraft in history, is 14.6 meters. Hartmann would wait until a target filled his entire windscreen before firing a single burst. At that range, he almost never missed. At that range, the debris from his kills regularly struck his own aircraft. He didn't care. His Bf-109, the Messerschmitt Bf-109G, the workhorse of the Luftwaffe, was not the fastest or the most maneuverable aircraft in the sky by 1943. The Soviet Yak-3 and La-7 were genuine competitors. What gave Hartmann his edge wasn't the machine. It was the milliseconds, the ability to read a developing situation in the air faster than his opponents could process it. His survival didn't come from superior equipment. It came from superior pattern recognition at speeds no human brain was ever designed to operate at. Let's reconstruct one morning over the Kuban bridgehead in the summer of 1943. You are Erich Hartmann. You spot a formation of Soviet fighters at altitude, maybe 12 aircraft, Lavochkin Lay-5s, solid machines, flown by experienced pilots. The standard move, according to doctrine, is to call in support, form up, and engage. Hartmann does something else. He climbs above the formation. He watches. He identifies the trailing aircraft, the one slightly out of position, the one whose pilot is scanning ahead rather than behind. He dives. The entire attack takes less than 5 seconds. One burst. The Lay-5 goes down. Before the formation can react, Hartmann has reversed, climbing back into the sun. By the time they know what happened, he is already gone. He did this 352 times. In the documentary record left by Yagdgeshwater 52's operational diaries, confirmed against Soviet loss records cross-referenced after the war, the numbers hold. They hold uncomfortably well for anyone who wants to dismiss them as propaganda. Soviet historians who spent decades trying to disprove Hartmann's record ultimately conceded the accuracy of the bulk of his claims. The war on the Eastern Front was enormous, brutal, and chaotic. The air war alone consumed aircraft and pilots at a rate the Western Front never matched. The volume of opportunity was real. What was not common was the consistency with which one man exploited it. He was shot down 16 times. Let that sit for a moment. 16 crashes, forced landings, and emergency exits, some in Soviet-held territory. On at least one occasion, he was captured, briefly, and escaped by feigning injury and then running when the guard's attention shifted. He was 21 years old. He would not turn 22 until April 1944, by which point he had already scored over 200 victories. The Soviets put a bounty on him. They called him the Black Devil of the South, a name derived from the black tulip he painted on the nose of his aircraft to honor his fiancée, Ursula Petch, whom he would eventually marry in 1944, despite having almost no leave time to do so. Soviet pilots were ordered to avoid engaging him directly. To refuse combat with a specific individual pilot, in any air force, in any war, is an extraordinary acknowledgement of what one human being can do. By the war's end in May 1945, Hartmann was 23 years old. He was Germany's most decorated soldier, holder of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds, the highest military decoration the Third Reich issued, awarded to fewer than 30 people in the entire war. He surrendered to American forces in Czechoslovakia. The Americans, honoring prior agreements, handed him to the Soviets. What followed is a different kind of story. The Soviets imprisoned him for 10 years. They offered him early release if he would collaborate, testify against his comrades, and help build the East German Air Force. He refused every time. He was convicted of war crimes in a Soviet military tribunal, charges that were widely regarded as politically motivated, as no credible evidence of attacks on civilian targets was ever produced. He served the full sentence. He returned to West Germany in 1955, a decade after the war ended, gaunt and aged, but unbroken. He flew again. The new West German Luftwaffe, the Bundeswehr, recruited him to help build their jet fighter force. He trained pilots on the F-86 Sabre and later the Lockheed F-104 Starfighter. He reportedly hated the Starfighter, calling it underpowered and dangerous, an assessment shared by a grim casualty rate that would haunt the German Air Force for years. He retired in 1970 as a full colonel. He died in 1993 at the age of 71. Here is the counterintuitive truth in all of this. Erich Hartmann's success was not built on aggression. It was built on restraint, on patience, on the willingness to break off, to wait, to choose the moment rather than force it. Pilots who flew with him noted that he seemed unhurried even in combat, not calm exactly, but deliberate. Every movement calculated. He outthought his opponents before he outfought them. The modern military strategists who have studied the Eastern Front air war in depth, drawing on declassified Luftwaffe records, Soviet operational archives, and post-war pilot testimonies, consistently identify the same pattern across the highest-scoring aces of any nation. They did not fight more. They fought smarter. They selected their engagements with a precision that felt almost mechanical. They refused situations they could not control. They mastered the geometry of the sky the way a chess player masters the board, not reacting to threats, but anticipating them 3 moves ahead. The lesson is not about war. The lesson is about decision-making under extreme pressure, about the value of a clear mind in a dangerous situation, about the discipline to wait for the right moment even when everything around you is screaming that you must act now. About the uncomfortable truth that the most effective people in almost any high-stakes domain are rarely the most aggressive. They are the most patient, the most selective, the most willing to say, "Not yet," until the moment arrives that they cannot miss. You hear it before you see it. A high-pitched scream tearing through the sky at over 600 kilometers per hour. And if you are Erich Hartmann, you already know exactly where it's going to be.